The very first official trailer for Walking with Dinosaurs 2025 has just come out earlier today. It's only a minute-long trailer, but I've got so much to talk about. I also want to give a shout out to Mesozoic Travelogue over on Twitter, just for helping me round out the roster that we're about to see and talk about. I think we've nailed down basically everything in the trailer at this point. Not literally, that'd be a little bit morbid. We open with the only human-bound scenes in the trailer. Now this might sound a little bit weird, but I hate humans in my nature documentaries. David Attenborough is a certified legend, but as soon as he pops up on my screen, I'm suddenly far less interested in the documentary. Sorry David, I'm sure you're watching. Now we've heard this iteration of the show is going to have more in common with the likes of Dinosaur Revolution in terms of format, which means more talking heads and scientific asides. That makes me sad. I'm hoping it's contained to the start and end of the videos, but I'm sure it'll make some people happy, and I'm happy if you're happy, even if I'm not happy that I'm not happy. You happy? For the rest of the trailer, rather than going scene by scene, I'm going to cut it down into what I believe are the 6 different episodes, crossing 6 different regions and 6 different epochs. Well, there's a lot of Cretaceous, as you might expect. Episode 1 then takes us to the late Jurassic of Portugal and the Lourinhã Formation. Definitely butchered that one. Actually the only non-Cretaceous episode in the entire lot. We only have one dinosaur showcased in the trailer for this formation, Lusotitan, a brachiosaurid initially named as a species of Brachiosaurus, before being given its own special genus almost 50 years later in 2003. At 69 foot in length and 30 tons in mass, Lusotitan was a pretty big boy. Now in classic Walking with Dinosaurs fashion, each episode is going to have a star animal, and Lusotitan is taking that role for the first episode. It appears several times throughout the trailer, but the most notable appearance is of course this one. Now this is still a speculative rendering, as it also was on the prehistoric planet Dreadnoughtus, but it's not for lack of reasoning. Sauropods, much like modern avian dinosaurs, have inflatable air sacs throughout their body to help support their weight. Many different birds are capable of inflating these sacs externally as a display structure, to be threatening or to be sexy. Or to be both. Hell, it's not even unique to dinosaurs. Dromedary camels have a dula that they can inflate to attract a mate as well. The fact is, birds are weird. And it's likely dinosaurs had more extravagant display features than they are typically rendered with. These Lusotitan air sacs fall into that category and look mighty fine, the big bobble-headed weirdo. Whilst we don't see them in the trailer, other notable dinosaurs in this formation include the likes of Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, so there is potential for some very cool carnivores to appear in the future during this episode. But the Lusotitan scenes look beautiful. There's one shot in particular as the sun is setting that feels very classic Walking with Dinosaurs, in a way a lot of the other scenes maybe don't. We've got double the species for episode 2 as we head to the Cedar Mountain Formation of early Cretaceous USA, and we're not leaving the Cretaceous ever again. Our first arrival then is Gastonia, an ankylosaurid, possibly a nodosaurid. It's been bandied around a little, from Cedar Mountain. This is for me one of the best rendered dinosaurs in the trailer. I think being able to focus on the bony plates and the less skin-like textures has made it look much more realistic. Interesting to note, we have more material for Gastonia than any other basal ankylosaur, but that comes with a drawback. We have so much disparate material for Gastonia that it's actually difficult to know how its body was put together. How many spikes did it have? We have so many spikes that could come from so many different specimens. We can't quite figure out how many would go onto a single dinosaur. We see some interesting behaviours for it as well. A dominance display as 2 Gastonia drive their skulls into one another. Now the brain case for Gastonia was quite mobile, and that means it was built well for shock absorption, part of a suite of defensive tools including those formidable shoulder spikes and the sacral shield that made Gastonia a very successful dinosaur. It was abundant, it absolutely thrived in this environment, it was all over the bloody place. This may have also been in part because it would have made for a very tough meal for what was the apex predator of the environment, the Utah raptor. And we can see that in this scene where they square up against one another. The fully feathered Utahraptor almost hissing, spreading its arms and wings in a threat display to a, let's be honest, relatively unbothered looking Gastonia. Now we can see the Gastonia turning its back to the raptor, allowing it to use that tail as a weapon against the Dromaeosaurid. Seen here as the Utah takes a brutal blow to the skull. That said, it's interesting to note this is a different Utahraptor. There are two in the trailer. There's a grey one from the earlier scene, and this crimson coloured one seen dashing through the forest, and then eventually taking a blow to the head. It's possible we're seeing parts of a larger pack, as we'll see in just a second. Are we seeing typical interspecies variation? Are we seeing sexual dimorphism with the maybe brightly coloured male, as we often see in modern birds? Either way, it's a really good looking Utahraptor. It's thickly built and strong looking, as a modern Utahraptor interpretation absolutely should be. I also really like that almost claw looking patterning we have along the snout. It's not quite the skull Rex, but we're on our way. In the final scene for this formation, the forest burns. A pack of Utahraptor flee together. Or are they fleeing? Are they potentially using the scourge of the fire, the distraction from the fire, as an opportunity to hunt? Because we see the Gastonia here as well, fleeing that same blaze. Our third episode is sure to be a fan favourite, with the introduction of the Spinosaurus from the Kemkem formation, not the Bahariya formation this time around. The trailer is cut together a little bit all over the place, but there seems to be 3 Spinosaurus scenes showcased here. The first one follows the Spinosaurus and its heartbreakingly adorable gaggle of babies. I would bet $1, and I'm very poor so that means a lot, that this was at least a little bit inspired by modern ducks. I mean, look at it, it is a mother duck leading her troop in single file by the water. And that's not to mention this earlier sequence of a baby Spinosaurus popping up on the head of its half-submerged parent and making a noise that is decidedly duck-like. It basically quacks, this thing. You can see those high-placed nostrils flaring on the parent, like with modern semi-aquatic animals, allowing it to submerge a lot of itself below the water's surface and still keep breathing. We're going to see a slightly more interestingly coloured Spinosaurus soon. This one is more melding in with the environment, but interestingly it does have a very rigidly rendered raised tail. There's no floor drag here, is what I'm trying to say, that you may have seen in the likes of Prehistoric Kingdom. Now we do have scant evidence for tail dragging marks for Spinosaurus, but some scientists have suggested it would probably harm the dinosaur to do it too often. That said, given the size and morphology, it would likely be difficult to never drag the tail along the ground. What we do know is that it's all very cute, and it's lovely seeing Spinosaurus rendered as a family unit with these scarcely sailed and entirely lacking in a crest baby Spinos hiding in the comfort of their parents' shadow. It's just nice to see a so often ferociously rendered dinosaur seen as this loving family unit. You'll notice the Spinosaurus doesn't have lips. That's another topic that's up for debate, as most theropods were likely lipped, and even the other ones in this trailer are, some of them to a fairly large amount. But if there's any dinosaur that's likely to be unlipped, it is Spinosaurus. Some say yes and some say no. At this point in time, it is a matter of personal preference, and I think a lot of it will depend on where you fall with the feeding habits as well of the Spinosaurus. But it is personal preference. As is this next scene, a Spinosaurus bursting out of the depths to grab an Onchopristis within its jaws. Now, Onchopristis is a sclerorhynchoid, which is basically it's quite similar to a sawfish. Now, some paleontologists argue that Spinosaurus was a more than capable underwater hunter, and some will argue it was much more likely to wade through shallow water and snatch at fish from there. There's very respected paleo people on both sides of the debate, so it's interesting to see which direction a documentary will go in. Unfortunately for the Spino, the meal is short-lived. It is attacked soon after by another Spinosaurus, causing it to drop the fish from its jaws, but giving us a beautiful look at its dentition and that crocodilian jaw shape. Now, given the striping on the jaw of the one being attacked that wasn't present on the parent from earlier, I think this is the parent perpetrating the attack, potentially desperate for food to feed their horde of annoying children. desperate enough to wage a potentially lethal battle against another of its kind. The kids are nowhere to be seen as the two square up, and the new, slightly larger looking Spino certainly has the more impressive coloration of the two, along with a higher and slightly differently shaped head crest, all burgeoned by this burnt orange colour. More sexual dimorphism? Potentially. That hunt for food seems to continue, as in this very short clip, we see the claws of the Spinosaurus as it squares up against what looks likely to be a Carcharodontosaurus, a massive theropod predator that also roamed in the Kemkem area. This Spino is going, imagine taking on a fully grown Spinosaurus and then a fully grown Carcharodontosaurus, really going through the ring of this thing. It's hard to make out too much of the carc at this point in time other than that sort of reddy brown coloration on the shoulders and necks. But what's interesting is actually the corpse on the right hand side. It looks like the legs of a sauropod to me. It could be a log, but I think it's a dead sauropod. Is the Spino then so desperate for food now that it's going to take on a Carcharodontosaurus and attempt to steal its meal? That sauropod is also our final dinosaur of this formation so far. This titanosaur that appears very briefly here, with its shoulders covered in a slew of bony osteoderms. It's thickly built, it's rotund, dwarfing those trees sprouting up nearby. If we're sticking with Kemkem dinosaurs for this, then this is an as of yet unnamed titanosaur, identified from a few bones in the Kemkem formation. It could also be a migratory titanosaur from another formation, maybe a Paralotitan from Bahariya in the east. As we saw in Prehistoric Planet, we shouldn't necessarily assume that every creature we see on documentaries like this has to come from that specific formation. Dinosaurs likely travelled wider ranges than we're anticipating. On to episode 4, mainly focused on Albertosaurus, but we're going to see some others pop up along the way. Now, we have seen this Albertosaurus before in the preview images, and it continues the colour scheme that most of the dinosaurs do. It's got this fairly tepid coloration, but then this big pop of saturation somewhat, usually around the face. Here it's that unique purple colour around the eyes and the front of the snout, and coupled with the strong keratin display jutting out and the smattering of furry feathering, it really makes for an original looking Tyrannosaurid. As seems to be a consistent and welcome theme with the theropods so far, we see the Albertosaurus exhibiting some familial or breeding behaviour. I'm leaning towards the former, with two dimorphic members of the genus nuzzling up against each other in this god-ray lit cave. What's really curious here though, and I say that in high-pitched voice because it's very curious, is that if you look into the shadows during the first few frames, you can see two more Albertosauruses. They've got this green coloration, whereas the other trio and the one remaining one here have this purple coloration. It feels like two separate family units, but that makes me wonder why the green ones are being so friendly with what seems like the only remaining member of the purple trio. Would they be willing to accept a new member from another family if that member had lost their own? In stark contrast to that, in its other scenes, Albertosaurus is trying to kill a lot of things. In one, it's dragging down a fleeing Atstarchid to the ground as it attempts to fly away. It's a cool move that very much feels like a real-world hunting behaviour. This black feathered and large crested Atstarchid doesn't appear anywhere else, and I can't really guess as to what it is. There are no Atstarchids found in the Horseshoe Canyon formation where we are. That said, Atstarchids are immensely migratory, so this could be one of any number of different genera. It just happens to have flown into the Albertosaurus territory. More locally than that though, we do have a Chasmosaurine ceratopsid also squaring up to the Alberto. Now it's hard to define given we just get a glimpse of frill and horn here, but given the locale and time period, I think this is likely to be Arhinoceratops. Based on the rounder nature of the frill, Albertosaurus still isn't done yet however, as we see it lunge at and clamp its jaws down around the neck of a struggling Edmontosaurus and... Wait, are we in episode 5 now? Yes, it seems like Albertosaurus is going to manage a bit of a crossover. Or Edmontosauruses. I'm betting on the former. These two episodes both take place in late Cretaceous Canada, with this one shifting over to the Wapiti Formation. Evidence has been found for Edmontosaurus and Albertosaurus in both of these locales, and there's also tyrannosaurid tracks in the region made from a dinosaur about Albertosaurus size. This is also our best close-up look at Edmontosaurus, identifiable from its other species Anectons from the presence of the crest or comb above its head. Not hollow in Edmontosaurus, but fleshy. The dentition here is interesting as well though. You can see how the beak curves in this kind of concave shape that's perfect for tearing off foliage. Edmontosaurus has been found in large number in multiple bone beds, so the assumption is they travelled in fairly huge herds much like this one, crossing its preferred habitat of flooded plains with ample food, ample water, and using sheer numbers for protection. What's really interesting though is this later scene. Not only do we get a better look at that white, almost bony pattern along the beak and the ridged, raised vertebra creating this sort of hump towards the front of the back, but not all of the Edmontosaurus have a crest. Now this crest, like basically everything dinosaurs do, is likely for social signalling and even more so, mating displays. And so the suggestion here then is that it's also a sign of sexual dimorphism, with the males possessing a head crest and the females likely not. Edmontosaurus though is not the focus of this episode, Pachyrhinosaurus is. Because of course it is. It is the ceratopsid du jour at the moment. Now there's not too much to say about the design. I feel like Pachyrhino is pretty well established at this point, but I will say it looks really nicely rendered, with that prominent nasal boss, tilted crest horns, and sharp, very skinny beak that kind of blends beautifully up to that boss, all fantastically textured. What is a little interesting is the coloration around the mouth. We see these dark areas of colour in modern animals as well. This is nominally to protect from the glare of the sun on those less protected regions. So I wonder if that was the inspiration here. You can see it in the nostrils as well. These would be the most sensitive parts of the body that are exposed to the sunlight. Like the Edmontosaurus, the Pachyrhinosaurus are gathering in immense migratory herds here, looking morphologically similar to their parents but with a head that is comically too large for their body, stupid babies, and lacking the horns atop the frill. You can just about see them starting to sprout in there towards the top. We also see dominance behaviour from them fairly akin to the Edmontia, with a pair charging towards each other boss first. Now we have skeletal evidence of Pachyrhinosaurus showing extensive lesion damage to these nasal bosses, likely caused by this very same behaviour. I particularly like the onlooker Pachyrhinosaurus, who seems to be really upset about proceedings. Maybe they're fighting over her love, who knows. The final trailer scene for the Pachyrhinosaurus shows the front of the herd stopped at the edge of the forest. Perhaps that's their destination. As a vicious lightning storm rages overhead, they seem actively agitated by the circumstances. Now is that because of the storm, an unknowable phenomenon to them? Or is something else lurking in the cover of the darkness? Earlier in the trailer, they do come into contact with something new, an Atstarkid soaring overhead, the same one seen in a handful of earlier scenes flying, in groups no less, over a sunset-lit lake. This is likely to be the as of yet unnamed Atstarkid, currently only known from tracks found in a specific part of the Wapiti Formation called Tyrant's Isle. It's always hard to say with animals that travel for such long distances, but I imagine that was the inspiration behind this one, if nothing else. It looks cool, little tail, burst of coloration around the head as per usual, big old grey wings curving into a concave shape. Lovely. Don't know what it is, but it's cool. Our final episode then takes us over to, of course, Hell Creek. The highlight dinosaur of the episode, Triceratops, and that means we are treated to a swathe of trike and baby trike footage. It's my favourite dinosaur, I've been blessed. In a trailer filled with adorable babies, this little gremlin bounding into its entirely nonplussed mother may just be the highlight. Its front horns scarcely there at all, the back two only half developed. It's this beautifully animated little sequence, something I haven't given enough credit to throughout this video so far. As the perturbed mother stirs and the baby looks up with a look that somehow says, "Oh god, what have I done? I've messed up." Sold by those little steps backwards. Sorry, mum. The patterning on the Triceratops is pretty subdued here, forest greens on the baby in particular to help it blend in with the foliage and survive to adulthood. But a nighttime scene a little bit later shows off that frill display beautifully. We have an absolute cavalcade of oranges and purples, culminating in these big black circles clearly evolved to look somewhat like eyes. A threat display to end all threat displays. They seem to be defending themselves or their progeny from a Tyrannosaurus rex. Scarcely visible here in the shadow, the Rex does make an appearance shortly afterwards in this already much memed scene, with it somehow sneaking up on this blissfully unaware Adstarkid. The Rex itself does look a little bit inspired by the original Walking With Dinosaurs T.rex, given that dark grey and subdued red coloration, but of course it's a substantial improvement on what was, if we're totally honest, a little bit of a monstrosity. Even for back then, it wasn't a great Rex. This one is fully lipped, talk about that in a second, and appears to have a very faint smattering of hair-like feathering across the top of its skull and down its spine. It's thick, as it should be, and some regions like the snout are just impeccably well detailed. The keratinous displays above the eyes are pretty subdued, I would say, as far as a Rex goes, but they're present and they're decoratively coloured. Now those aforementioned lips are an interesting one because these are particularly thick, widely set, they're not close to the jaw. It makes the Rex look really strangely cute, at least until it tries to take the Adstarkid's head off. Usually they are rendered closer in, but it seems there may be more evidence emerging to support this slightly extended rendering. Now, speaking of the Adstarkid, with its Spino-esque head crest and its very modern bird-esque neck skin flapping there, especially that blooming pink coloration. We actually have a name for this one. It's not Quetz, as I keep hearing people suggest, but it's Inferno Draken. This is a scarcely known Adstarkid from the Hell Creek Formation, one which is known from a single neck bone and only formally described in February of this year. This thing is basically brand new, although it was discovered all the way back in 2002. It was discovered, as it happens, in a shared bone bed with Tyrannosaurus rex, so we're basically seeing that bone bed come to life in this scene. It's clearly in a spot of trouble here, but it is all relative. Earlier in the trailer we can see it attempting to hunt the baby Triceratops in this beautiful waterfall scene. It stands up on those hind legs, spreads those big large wings. Relatively speaking, Inferno Draken wasn't huge for an Adstarkid compared to the likes of Quetzalcoatlus, and it spreads itself into a threat display against a trike who visibly cowers in response before dodging the sharp, pointed beak of the predator as it strikes against the ground. With that, we come to the end of the trailer with an eye. Is it the Rex? It kind of matches. Who knows? Anyways, let's cover a couple of things here at the end quickly. I've already been talking for far too long. Nearly 35 minutes according to my recording. I'm gonna have to cut that down. No, the CGI is not on the level of the likes of Prehistoric Planet. These two shows are working with vastly different budgets, and it's not realistic to expect as such. That said, I do think it looks a lot better here in motion than it did with those preview images we saw a few months ago. It's certainly good enough, and the animals are rendered, painted, and animated with plenty of love to carry the show through. I do have tentative qualms with the format and how the trailer is put together. This 2025 iteration is not intending to be a reboot of Walking With Dinosaurs of the past, but it would be a shame to lose that narrative impact and the emotional resonance and slightly off-kilter weirdness that the original had. I hope the influence of the likes of Prehistoric Planet and the integration of human-led segments don't interfere with that too much. My concern is that it's just a new dinosaur documentary with the Walking With Dinosaurs name kind of slapped over the top of it. And that's exciting in and of itself. It's a great looking documentary, but Walking With Dinosaurs means something, you know what I mean? So right now it doesn't give me that feeling, but at the end of the day, it's just a trailer. Anyway, that is it from me. Let me know your thoughts on the trailer in the comment section down below, and stick around for more Walking With Dinosaurs news and analysis, and of course, general dinosaur nonsense. Thank you so much for joining me. Cheers, much love as always. Bye bye.